The following is a show we're calling On the Horizon. It's a current events-based opinionated show punctuated by chill music. So what does that mean, current events-based opinionated show? Simply put, we start with the news and go from there. We talk about the impact current events have on us and further what that impact means to the progress of our country and our world. We don't pretend to be professional economists or political pundits or anything more than a few college students just trying to work out the problems in the world. It's all in the name of progress. The opinions are our own, not our station's, and it's all live. So, without further ado, this is On the Horizon. You are listening to On the Horizon on WPPJ 670 AM. My name is Alex Popichak, and I am joined in the studio by Mr. Christopher Chandler, and we're also joined by Miss Emily Bennett. Welcome aboard, Emily.
Hello, Alex. It's a pleasure to be here.
And so the question overarching our whole episode here is what defines who we are? And it's kind of a broad question, but it's an important one.
We came up with this question. I was assigned with homework in my government class the other day. The teacher said, what influences our culture, like who we are and what we celebrate, the things we do. So from that, we just kind of, pose a question like, who are we as a people? What describes us, and how does that, how do we reflect our society in that way, and how do we shape our society given who we are as a person?
And I find it very interesting. We were talking about how to start the show itself. And one of the ideas that was kicked out was like, okay, we could all go on there and be like, hi, I'm Alex. I'm a journalism major from Carnegie. And I started rattling off all these things, and we got to wondering, why do we choose these things, these attributes?
Why do we say what we say when we
introduce ourselves? So Emily started, as soon as we were talking about this during the commercial break, Emily started talking about,
she started to question us.
She started to question us, and which I definitely approve of, because Emily should be questioning us anyway.
Absolutely.
And so you were talking about how, this shouldn't be a thing. So what was it that you were saying?
Right. Well, I think the first issue that we need to address here is that the reason this question even was brought up was because of homework.
Yeah.
So I think that for you to reflect on who you are as a person and to be assigned to do that, to actually have to be forced to stop and think about, well, who am I really? I think that just shows that
there's a problem.
That's a flaw.
Oh yeah.
Yes. So it's when we have to stop and we have to think and look in a mirror and spin around 10 times and chant our name or something and try to figure out who we are. I see a serious problem there. I don't think that people are just one thing for their entire life, or even just a small group of things, 3 or 5 things, or even 10 things. Just a small bubble of things. I don't think that we are ever the same thing.
So you would say that there's a character arc through life. Just in putting it in terms in film, since you talked about film earlier, a character arc is when the character changes throughout the film. But usually in a film, they acknowledge that. By the end, they realize it. But we were talking previously, before we came back on, that we kind of believe that in life, we don't really realize that we're having this character arc because we're trying to keep ourselves in the frames of how society wants us to be. So would you agree with that? Or?
Yeah, I think we're blind to it for sure. I obviously am a huge fan of stories. I love stories, writing stories, experiencing them. And I think that fake stories, made-up ones, like movies and books and things like that, imitate and mimic real life, obviously, because, where would we get ideas from?
Yeah.
And they mimic experience and human experience, and they're made by humans. And so I think that the best part, and I think this is an understood notion, the best part of these made-up stories is when the character changes. And that's what makes a movie good. If you have dynamic characters, that is why people watch your movies or read your books.
Yeah.
If you have static characters that never change or unchanging, no one's interested. And so I think that the most important part of our lives in general are those character arcs.
Yeah. But I pose this question, though. In a film or in a book, when a character has that arc, it's a single moment in time. Usually, after the plot towards the end, they realize that they're a new person now, which is great.
Right.
But in life, do you think there's one specific prime character arc, or
no?
Do we plateau, or are there more over time?
Maybe there would be one that might stand out more because of what we're told to think stands out more, like getting married or having a kid or something. But I think that that's also a societal norm that should be broken, because I think that our lives are composed of tons and tons of character arcs. And
I was just about to say, it's a bit unfair to look at someone's life as a whole as one huge character arc, because really it's a bunch of arcs that kind of leapfrog with one another. And so it can't be like one particular moment, but you're also constrained when you're making a movie into this is the story.
Yeah, this is the story.
And
Yeah, it's
this
just
is
condensed.
the time. And life, yes, it is also condensed, but it's condensed to like several years and significantly longer than like 2 hours on screen.
Right.
So I think it's not necessarily like a trend, but it's a bunch of little leapfrogs.
yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I think that because of that, though, like if we would all recognize that, we would all realize that our character is constantly changing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So who we are as a character is not the same person. You know, like when you think about like, even when you look at a picture of yourself as a kid, like you're literally not even the same person. Like
Yeah, of
Oh,
course.
yeah.
if you had seen a picture, like you probably wouldn't have even known it were you, had your parents or whatever been like, that's little Emily there.
And
wouldn't
maybe you
have
can
even
tell by the
identified.
eyes, but maybe
Right, you
that's
wouldn't
about
have.
it.
You no longer identify with who that person is, and so I think I mean, obviously, you guys were talking about this earlier, kind of with Oscars and things of that nature. To marginalize people is a bad idea. Like we understand that. Like the second you assume something about someone is wrong. So I think to assume something about ourselves for an eternity, like I am this, I am quiet, I am outgoing,
Yeah.
I am interested in science, like things like that. Like I think the second you assume that, like.
Well, see,
Wrong.
I would say it's not assuming, though. I mean, don't you think it's important to kind of, I mean, even though you're changing over time, like you said, like life has these bunch of character arcs, but don't you think it's important to kind of realize who you are as a person and kind of recognize that and use that to help yourself grow?
See, that goes back to the whole realizing who you are notion.
Yeah.
Which I think is bogus, because I think that our entire lives we're told, find who you are and find who you are. And I'm sure we've all experienced this, you know, like restless nights where like, what does this mean? Who am I?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And so, like we're told to find ourselves. And I think that is a ludicrous notion, because we're not really able to find one exact thing.
And in many ways, it's not really something that's lost. Saying that, oh, go find yourself, or in college you'll become your inner self, or what. I mean, that's great and wonderful on paper, but in reality, that's just one resolution to one arc. And where you are at this point in time, like I consider myself a significantly different person than even before Christmas break.
Right.
And even before that, like in coming to college. So I think, like you said, finding yourself is a completely bogus notion.
Well, see, I think I kind of have to disagree.
Okay.
The only reason I say this is because I think when most people say finding yourself, they kind of mean, like, where do you fit into society? What's your place in society? How can you help the people
And you're
around
okay with
you?
that?
Well, no, that I'm not okay with.
Okay.
What I'm about to say, though, I think in regards to realizing who you are as a person, it's different from that. It's separate. Like, you realizing your inner self is different from people telling you to find your place in society. That's something, that's like a system that we're just trying to fit into. But I think it's important to discover who you are as a person, because it helps you make relationships with other people over time. Like for me personally, you know, Point Park is my third college now, you know what I mean? And throughout the whole time from bouncing from one college to another and taking a semester off, me realizing who I am helped me today. Like, it helped me decide to be a cinema major. It helped me to decide to go back into political science because I realized that I liked it. And I don't think if I didn't realize who I was as a person, I wouldn't be doing the things I'm doing right now. Like, maybe I wouldn't be doing this radio show right now if I didn't realize that, you know what, I like to speak about these different issues. I like to, you know, discuss different topics with different people. And I think that's pretty important. And I feel that that is separate from people saying to you to find your own place in society.
Right. It is
Yeah.
a fine line, though, for sure.
Yeah.
Like, finding what you really enjoy and then bowing to society, like, to fit into a box.
Well,
fine line.
that was something I was going to bring up. You had said in finding yourself, in the first definition that you gave, was finding your role in society.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think society as a whole allows for multidimensional characters? Because you have to fit a certain role, which is a single dimension. But, I mean, is that really where the failure is, to acknowledge how complex people are?
No, I feel that we're, like you said, I feel like we're kind of forced to, you know, be placed in these systems and fit this certain way, live this kind of life, which is unfortunate because when you do that, sometimes you lose pieces of yourself. And it could be just the free spirit inside of me. And Emily, I know that you have a free spirit. We talked about this before.
Is that so? You're marginalizing me?
No, I'm not marginalizing you. It's an observation. But,
You're right.
But really, though, I feel that, you know, our spirits are kind of being diluted. We're being put in this cage, this box, which hurts us and not becoming our full selves. And I think to really have our place, quote unquote, place in society, we have to be our full selves. If that makes sense.
So can a free spirit take on? Does a free spirit necessarily need to take on a form?
What do you mean? What do you mean by form?
I guess I was thinking like when I think free spirit, I think in the abstract.
Mm-hmm.
But when I think of form, I think of something a bit more concrete, which is what society like yearns for.
Yeah.
And so, do you sacrifice yourself in becoming the form? I don't know.
Personally, I feel yes.
Yeah.
You do sacrifice yourself, which is like which is unfortunate. And personally, I think of the soul as kind of this concrete thing. Like that's kind of just my belief in a way. And I feel that's important to realize who you are as a person to move on through life. So I don't know if you agree with that or not, or if that makes any sense to you. Or
that does make a lot of sense, and it goes back to people are a lot more complex than I think many people realize.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is a failure on our society's part, and I guess in our upbringing of like failing to acknowledge that other people are as complex and have this many dimensions.
And just tying that back into earlier, I had a question for you, Emily. You mentioned marginalizing people. What do you like? Can you specify that? What do you meant by that?
Like she's a singer, she's a dancer.
But isn't it important to observe like who people are?
I'm
and,
definitely
like, know who
not.
they are?
I'm definitely. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like demeaning or debasing like people's interests. I think that every second of every day you should be finding things that interest and intrigue you. But I think the second that you assume something about anyone, you're wrong.
Okay.
So even if I don't feel as though I'm assuming something about someone, I'm still wrong.
Well, just to clarify, though, assuming something is different from observing something. Like, if you went up on stage and you sang a song,
right.
no, but like if you sang a song on stage, obviously, if you were good at it, I'm right to say, hey, she's a singer, she's a great singer. That's not me assuming it. That's me observing what you're doing.
Right.
So,
yeah. No, I definitely don't. I agree with that. I just think that like on like a personal level, like you shouldn't be telling yourself I'm only these many things. I can't be those things that I thought about being because I'm not that good at them, or I'm not as interested as I once was in them. I think that like you should never like do that to yourself. You know, tell yourself I'm only these things. That's what I was meant to be. That's my niche, my purpose. Like I found myself. Mm-hmm. I don't ever really think that you should probably really reach that point unless you like have some divine providence and like some grand purpose, like because I believe some people do have like maybe one thing in life that they do because they are absolutely like irrationally passionate about it and are so good at it, and like, you know what, do you. But I think the second you like tell yourself I'm only these many things inside this little bubble, like you cut yourself off to an entire world like of opportunity, this like grandiose wonderful thing that we've been told like our whole lives, but we probably shouldn't approach.
Do you think, Emily, that there's a happy medium that can be struck then? Because you can't take on. I don't think feasibly you can take on several different jobs. Like you know, you can't just occupy 3 or 4 different jobs based upon what you want to do.
Not at the same time.
But, yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. So I think, is there a medium that should be struck? Is that what we should strive for? Or
there's a medium that can be struck.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I think that in my own life it should be struck, because I also don't believe in settling or I really sort of reject the idea, lots of ideas of comfort, that traditional comfort, things like that people, lots of Americans,
like the American dream,
like worship and work their whole entire lives for. Like I really reject those sort of notions. So coming from that standpoint, probably how I feel about this is completely different from how someone who feels as though they should get a college degree and get a job and work in that field for so many years and become like super credentialed and then like live a happy retirement and then die. I think that's ridiculous. I think that's a miserable way to live. Unless that's your absolute favorite thing in the entire world.
Yeah, I was just about to say, like,
because who am I to hate on like someone who really loves something? Because that would just be like me saying, I feel this way.
Assuming.
Yeah. I feel this way, and like that's the only way that it can happen. Or like my life needs to look like everyone else's life needs to look like mine. No, if everyone else's life looked like mine, there would be
Dear me,
nothing.
Emily Bennett, if everything looked like your life,
that would
lots
be
of things would be on fire. Probably kids would be running amok.
I wouldn't
that
go
would be
that
a weird
far.
world.
I mean,
Right. Well, I
it'd just be
appreciate that.
very, very interesting.
Yeah, and so, yeah, I think that, I guess as long as you do whatever you're happy with, I am for doing absolutely anything you're happy with. And because of that, I want people to experience true, full happiness. And I think a lot of people cut themselves off to it because they struggle their entire lives with the idea of finding themselves and finding one thing they're meant to do.
But do you think a person actually can, though, in today's society, in today's age? Do you think they can actually reach a point where they can say, hey, you know what, I am happy with who I am, what I'm doing, where I'm at? Or do you think just how the American system is nowadays that we're always trying to grab for the next, ring on the ladder?
Well, I think that, yeah, I guess some people can meet what they think is true happiness. I probably will never, not on earth, because I love Jesus a lot.
Yeah.
And so because of that, like, I also have a completely different mindset about, like, getting lots of things and getting a nice house and things like that here. Like, I reject that idea as well.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
But I think you can create an idea. I don't want to use the word illusion, but I think you can definitely create an idea of comfort and happiness on earth. And I obviously think a lot of that stems from like relationships and things like that and accomplishments. And so like as long as you're, I guess as long as you are aiming for that, even if you never reach it, I'm not gonna.
As long as you have that dream and you're going for it.
Yeah, I'm not gonna like say someone who wants to do that is like their life is less important or awesome than like the life that I want.
So you'd say what defines who we are is like what we strive to be in the pursuit of being happy?
No.
No? Okay. Fair enough. There's your answer, ladies and gentlemen.
I'll be here all week. Just kidding. They're not going to ask me back.
No.
Oh, come on, Emily.
Maybe one of these days.
I have like nothing to add. This is really
Left you
interesting.
speechless.
Well, see,
Yes.
I think this conversation, though, I mean, there's really no one
There's no
solid
answer.
No,
There's
because-
nothing to settle on.
It's because there's no solution.
There's no
ever
solution,
in,
and there
in life,
won't be a
never.
solution
And
to
you
it.
know what that is reflective of? Finding yourself.
Finding yourself.
There is no one solution or conclusion.
Nice way to wrap this all up.
There's
Emily.
not.
There is
She
no...
dropped the mic.
She dropped the mic. Oh, my gosh.
Got it, though.
So, wow, a very interesting conversation with no conclusion because there isn't one. There isn't one to be had.
There shouldn't be.
Right
one.
on.
Exactly,
There shouldn't be, for
exactly. We've come up with some leapfrogging and we've come up with some other things. But all in all, thank you for joining us, Emily.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll be right back with more Horizon. This time some more music to close out the rest of the hour. And again, you're listening to On the Horizon on WPPJ. Hey, this is Alex, and I'm joined by Kris and Sam for our show On the Horizon, where we bring you our thoughts on current events and news. Join us from 8 to 10 p.m. on Saturdays right here on WPPJ 670 AM.